We have official approval. The Octanian captain wetly babbled through his mouth tube. War has been declared and we are to commence the attack at once. Send only one down the tube. I don't want to waste unnecessary ammunition on an inferior. One of the 6 tentacle-like fingers of the Octanian captain slicked forward and passed through the green activation hologram. In moments, a railgun dart was fired at close range. Well, close for space combat anyway. It would be colliding with its target in just 10 seconds, and after they received kill confirmation they would be on their way. Honestly, the captain of the Blatel T-class destroyer wasn't even sure if he should wait for confirmation. After all, they were only attacking a human ship. The humans had been a peaceful diplomatic race for their entire 150-year involvement in the Interstar Confederation. He was confident their diplomatic ship didn't even have weapons. Alarms blared around the command station as the human weapons officer Dunn switched off the loud alarm and announced, Captain, they've launched a railgun dart?" Her face set in an expression of bafflement, no alarm apparent on her features. "They what? Why?" Commander John Pike leaned forward in his command chair to get a closer look at the hologram display, and wouldn't you know it, the Octanian warship had indeed fired at them. He looked at the trajectory and saw the 100% chance of impact warning, which activated the dormant training modules in his mind, and made the idea that it was a possible warning shot improbable. Now flooding his mind were multiple plans of attack and defense, listed in order of descending effectiveness. What the hell was the Octanian captain thinking? Fire a decan and hail her captain. I want a word. Weapons Officer Dunn wasted no time in bringing the cannons around and switching to defensive options. After a brief mental calculation, she was firing the round type specifically designed to defend against railgun darts. She was careful to deselect the usually automatic counter munitions that usually fired alongside it. Defensive canister away. Wait 1. Confirmed deflection. Dart threat eliminated, Sea Captain. With the dart destroyed and the shields more than capable of dealing with any shrapnel. Captain Pike sat back with his brow furrowed and waited for his communication officer to patch through attacking vessel's captain. The 3D hologram appeared in front of him, showing the Octanian captain in all their tentacled glory, the computer doing its best to display its slick, leathery skin. On the other ship, the Octanian captain and his crew were in apparent shock. Had the humans just shot a railgun dart with another railgun dart? An impossible shot. There was no way the humans had done that on purpose. It must have been luck. It must be. But now the humans had hailed their ship and wanted to talk. He got his tentacles in order and sat up straight, trying to put the impossible shot out of his mind. "Commander Criso, this is Captain John Pike of the Royal Navy of the Empire of Earth. Care to explain why I've just had to defend myself against your attack? I am not in the mood for your culture's sometimes difficult to understand jokes." The crew's tubular eyes all stared up at the hologram and saw the strange dry-skinned species that still possessed its primitive hair that the hologram's descriptor labeled as a beard, and some noted the computer's added detail of scruffy next to it. Others looked up at their captain, who had managed to compose themselves after replaying the battle data showing the impossible shot the humans had just done. The captain's ever-moist lips slopped and bubbled together as his speech began. "Captain Pike, the Octanian Legion for Unstopping Progress has determined your small, weak society will be the next step towards our divinely blessed progress in the Interstar Confederation. War has been declared and given legal legitimacy by the Council. Your diplomats flee the consulate as we speak. Your Navy, the translator, did its best to inflict scorn on the word, will be consumed by our glorious progress. You're not the first ship to fall, and you will not be the last. Luck will not save you from our next attack. Thank you for your part in our history." The manners of the Octanians were always shallow, and this time was no different. Surgeon Dunn sounded, 5 railgun darts detected, 10 seconds to impact. "Shall I launch counters, Captain?" Captain Pike sat dumbfounded, his brow just as furrowed as before. They had declared war. They had declared that his ship was to be destroyed, and they had shot just 5 measly little railgun darts with 10 seconds to impact. 10 seconds. A lifetime to prepare, counter, and re-prepare 1,000 different defense and attack strategies. Was this some kind of joke? Well, if it was, he didn't find it funny. With war declared, the captain's refined adrenaline glands had activated and flooded his brain. This had many effects, heightening his senses, quickening his reflexes, and enhancing his brain's natural processing power. In reality, it simply felt like each second stretched for a minute. It might not be healthy to use often, but right now he needed it to ponder the ramifications of his next actions. He thought for a few heightened minutes, and 2 real-time seconds later he barked. "Launch counters and include the drink and fries this time," he commanded, ensuring that this time the second stage of the defense wasn't left out. Dunn's subconscious calculations were completed with 7 seconds remaining until impact. "Darts away!" Dunn said as 2 vibrations reverberated around the ship. One cannon fired 2 shots back to back. The first destroyed the closest dart before ricocheting into the following 2, as predicted. The Navy always encouraged saving ammunition where possible. The second defense shot took out the rear 2 railgun darts in a similar fashion, a calculation impossible for most computers, but for the hybrid minds of humans it was a trifle. This time, each munition fired their 5 counter-munitions up what they calculated as the topmost likely locations of the warship that had fired the darts. If the smart munitions could feel surprise, they would be full of it when they saw that the attacking ship hadn't even changed its course after firing. They hadn't even increased shields. The Octanian captain and his crew had just long enough for their sluggish minds to realize that the humans' first shot wasn't a fluke, and also that they were going to die when 15 separate impacts ripped their ship apart. When one dart struck the depth drive, the whole ship, the dozens of crew, the tons of biological and exotic metals of the armor, all instantly crushed into a miniature black hole before disappearing into its own 0 point. Dimension, never to be seen again. Back on the human ship, there were no shouts of victory, no celebrations, as each member pondered what this meant for them, and to a greater extent, humanity. Why had they been attacked? Why had the attack been so pathetic, and why did the Octanian ship not even try to defend itself? Captain Pike knew there'd be ample time to wonder about these questions on the way home. Pilots, activate the depth drive and take us under. Set course heading for base Earth. This needs to be reported. Aye, Captain, sounded throughout the bridge as the pilots and crew prepared the ship for a dive. Their depth drive activated, and with a command from the underpilot, it sliced a hole in their layer of space and peeled back a pitch-black void for them to glide their ship into. Once through the peeled-back layer of reality, the drive released it to slam itself closed, causing every piece of electronic equipment to immediately become disabled. The ship was thrown into the pitch darkness of the depths. The blackness was broken by the ever-professional pilots releasing control. To the side of them, flicking switches and buttons could be heard along with underpilots taking control. As the pilots specially trained for this layer of space took over and began firing up the mechanical engines using touch alone. It was a few minutes before the underlights slowly activated, the room beginning to be defined by the orange glow of the chemically activated lights, casting everything in stark contrasts of black and orange. With the ship successfully diving, the underpilots steered her with mechanical engines and began to ride the willful Arrow, Pike's ship, gracefully on the wave of time pressure the slamming gate had caused in the underside. Its sleek white curves and smooth outer armor gliding unseen through the slipstream of the underlayer of space. Captain Pike returned to his command chair after the 400-day journey that he spent rejuvenating in his resting pool. The billions of miles meant nothing to the depths, and his rotating team of underpilots had guided them through without a hitch. The deep, solid throb of the depth engine taking them out into reality sounded in the ship, though it was more like a feeling of something hitting your chest and vibrating your atoms rather than a sound. The captain checked his log and saw that 12 hours real time had passed since their dive 400 days ago. Well done, crew. Another smooth trip. I see a bonus in your futures. Bring us around and hail for a landing port near the military branch. The real space pilots took over and began doing what was ordered. But Pike's second-in-command, Corporal Miller, interrupted. Sir, would that not raise some eyebrows? The military branch gets what? 3 visits a year? He had a point. It would cause a stir. That's what I want, Miller. The sooner people realize the danger, the better. I wouldn't be surprised if we're not the first to warn them, but my other purpose here is to get my orders and figure out what to do next. Take us in. Down on the planetside waiting room, Miller's knee bounced rapidly as he sat at the long table. The cup of water in front of him had long since been emptied with no refill in sight. He and Pike had been sitting in the military conference room for almost 2 hours already, and even Pike's nearly boundless patience was wearing thin. He knew it would be some time, but the steward had given them water and then disappeared. No message or communication coming since. He paced along the length of the room, once again impressed by the view out the window. Even if it's true, beauty had waned over multiple viewings during the last few hours. Earth was truly beautiful, and he didn't visit it as much as he would like. The lush greenery was spotted by large white metal and glass buildings, the curved domes and sharp towers complementing the greenery rather than contrasting it. Artificial rivers of antigrav water twisted through the air, creating watery tunnels for personal transport vehicles to traverse as they wove from building to building. Orange now fell across the sky as the white sun dipped below the horizon. Purest white sun, not like the blues or oranges he'd been seeing recently. It was comforting on an instinctual level that he wasn't accustomed to, but it was a feeling he could see himself getting used to. A chime from his comm band alerted Pike of the time, knocking the captain from his musings. He remembered with annoyance that the sun had been high in the sky when they had arrived and demanded a meeting with Earth Empire, General Mavers, who had been Pike's commanding officer. This was something Pike had needed to look up as until now. The written action and reporting booklet, lovingly called the War Book, had been thrown into a locker along with various manuals, instruction books and other, I'll never read these but might keep just in case things. He turned and checked his uniform again. Deep blue sky was its main color, representing humanity's homeworld, with the detail being the navy of the ocean. Just as Pike was adjusting his dark blue tie, the door was abruptly opened, and the man he wanted to see strode in, though surprisingly so did 30 other men and women, looking just as serious as Empire Earth General Mavers was. Along with the military-looking personnel were their assistants carrying tablets, comms units, and even some archaic printed paper. A response was expected, but Pike had never expected it to be so swift. "Aten, Shun," someone in the room bellowed, and everyone felt the internal switch in their brain turn on, as they all snapped to attention and saluted as Earth Empire Commander Bloom entered the room and strode with purpose to the head of the table. At ease, he said, the rest of the room sitting as he did. Pike was only a fraction of a second after everyone else, but this was noted by the sharp commander. The room that had felt so empty before now felt like the floor might fall through from the weight of all the medals. "General Mavers, you were the one to call the emergency meeting, so you have the floor. Please inform us of the situation." Mavers stood and looked down at the papers in his hands and gave a nod to the assistants, who each leaned forward and handed a bundle of papers to their charges. Each of the officers looked curiously at the rarely seen paper that was only ever used for extremely top-secret documents, each page typed up individually on a mechanical typewriter that a small selection of people were trained to use. "I assure you, generals, the use of this much precious paper was necessary, and I can confirm that a tree has been planted for each page used here today." A few of the generals nodded at that, even as a few others gently picked up the paper, as though a small slip might cause them to fall apart. The commander, used to handling the kind of top-secret documents that needed to be on paper, flicked through the document at his ease as Mavers continued in his gruff voice. "This will come as a shock, but 15 hours ago, the Interstar Confederation announced that the Octurnian Legion for Unstopping Progress has been granted approval to declare war on humanity." He paused to let it sink in. The murmurs in the room hushed as he waved his hand at the table to activate its hologram and dimmed the lights. Hovering in the air above the table so everyone could see was a galactic map 2 meters wide. Around a quarter of the map was red, showing the territory of the Olap and the blue territory of the Empire of Earth, looking pitifully small beside it. "This is the current lay of the land showing us and the territories. But the bad news doesn't end there." He moved his hands in intricate ways and the map changed. "Here is a map showing not just the Olap's territory, but the space owned by their allies and those sworn to back them in war, along with likely future allies to the Olaps, should they request it from them." The Olap territory remained red, but nearly half of the displayed map changed to orange. This was met with some unsurprised grunts. He continued. Humanity had grown substantially since it had conquered the stars, but it had only been expanding for 150 years. We were barely on the radar of most of the other species, and most considered us little more than a novelty. Our experience is that humanity isn't exactly disliked soft skins. They call us after the fact that most developed species possess either chitin or leather-like exteriors. Our soft, pliable skin is seen as a weakness amongst most of the exoskeleton species. He allowed a bit of grumbling around the room. Combined with our relatively small stature compared to the galactic average, most look on our admission to the Interstar Confederation by the Star Council as an act of pity, and unfortunately this means most will be unsympathetic to our plight and unwilling to ally. As you know, humanity has taken strides in the last few decades by making diplomatic ties to various nations in exchange for resources, ally deals, and the like. But we are still looked upon as small and weak, something we may be able to use to our advantage. I'll allow General Wells to elaborate. A dark-skinned woman stood, her own pristine uniform decorated in medals. When she spoke, it was with cool, calm confidence, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. "Thank you, General Mavers. The Earth Defensive has been operating for the last 150 years, doing nothing but improving our combat effectiveness. Weapons, armor, battery drives, breakthroughs in space diving technology have all been a part of their efforts over more than a century. We have traded, bargained, coerced, and stolen our way up the technological ladder, and from our work over the last century, we have reverse-engineered the best offensive and defensive capabilities this galaxy has to offer. However, what many of you may be unaware of is what the other members of the Confederation have been doing over their few thousand-year reign. This caused a few nervous murmurs from everyone, as they all imagined the enormous advantage 3,000 years of R&D would cause. I can see your concern, but something we as a species need to cease is the assumption that alien species think like we, humans, do. They have completely different evolutionary trees, and this leads to completely different concepts of thinking about the world, scientific progress, and war. More mumbles filled the room as General Wells flicked her hand towards the hologram and displayed an interesting line graph. The vertical axis was labeled technological advancement, with the axis going from least developed to most advanced. The horizontal axis was labeled time, with 0 being the first time humanity interacted with another alien race 150 years ago to the present day. The surprising part was where the lines went. There were 4 lines, red for the Octanians, yellow for the Tellians, blue for humanity, and green for galactic average. The start of the graph was nothing unexpected. Humanity's line began at the very bottom corner, as least advanced in the galaxy. The Tellians were near about 80% of the way up. The Octanians were close at 75%, then the galactic average at about 50 to 60% of the way up the graph. What was causing a stir was the rest of the points on the graph. The Tellian line slowly slid upwards, sometimes overtaken by the Octanians, but not for long in most cases. All the while, the galactic average gradually increased steadily, but humanity's line well at. First, it was inarguably flat for the first 20 or so years most likely, because humanity had to deal with all the civil wars and political unrest that discovering we weren't alone in the galaxy caused, but then, to the surprise of everyone in the room, it moved drastically upwards, sometimes jumping by 10% in as many years, others even more. Up and up it went, until it showed our line's end comfortably 5% above even the Tellians, sitting at the top most advanced position. As you have all now seen, you are correct. Some of the drastic jumps in progress were when we traded for something more advanced, or had our own breakthroughs, but through effort and funding. We were able to slowly but surely continue to increase our technological knowledge. Most other species buy the best technology they can afford, and tack it onto their ships without knowing how it works. Some of the technology around is used so prevalently that the fact it has weaknesses are overlooked due to its simplicity and mass adoption. They're just happy if the things do what it's meant to when they press a button. She flicked a few more pieces of information and schematics onto the hologram. Humanity has studied each piece of tech we could get our hands on, learned from it, and designed new and better ones ourselves. After many years of improving and trading, eventually we could afford the best alien tech in existence, which some suppliers were happy to sell to us because no one knew we understood the core principles and could reverse engineer and improve upon the designs. As far as we can tell, our prowess surpasses even the most advanced species in existence. Ladies and gentlemen, she paused for effect, in just 150 years we have become the most technologically advanced species in the galaxy. And better yet, no one but us knows about it. The room was filled with excited chatter. Weapon experts began talking about battle tactics, and strategist experts began talking about strategically significant planets. She allowed the chatter to continue for a minute before one voice cut through them all. How is this possible? I do not doubt your reports, General, but I'm finding it hard to believe them. General Mavers voiced, the concerned looks of many more skeptical minds in the room, following his gaze back to General Wells. I could hardly believe it myself, General. She replied, understanding his concerns more than he knew, but discussions with xenobiologists and xenopsychologists made it more clear. It is to do with the evolutionary paths our species took. Tapping a few buttons on her comms pad brought up images of one of the main controlling forces in the galaxy. The Talians evolved from what we might consider a bear-like species on Earth, including the ability to hibernate. We believe this has led to a deep-seated ideology of get what you need, then rest. We see that in their advancements. She gestured to a point on the chart where the Talians were overtaken by the Octanians. When they are overtaken, they quickly rally to become the best again, then they stop. Please don't make the mistake I did where I assumed all species think like us. Our next question is usually what's next, but we don't have the instinctive response telling us that we are finished now, that we should rest, like the Talians do. There were some murmurs and nods of understanding around the room as General Wells continued. It is different with the Octanians, but no less alien. They evolved from a species that have hundreds of offspring with only a few expected to survive to adulthood. We see that in their battle doctrine and in their scientific development. They throw everything they have at a single problem until it is overwhelmed. She played recordings showing the Octanian swarm maneuvers the galaxy had come to fear. Thousands of ships attacking a single city all at once, many using their own ships as bombs as they plummeted into targets. Their progress is more gradual because, unlike us, they invest heavily in just a small group of their absolute best scientists. This is unthinkable to us who have learned to diversify our scientific investments. It was a young prodigy still in college, Dr. Shu Yang, who first opened the depths. That would simply not be possible to the Octanians, as the only way to get any kind of funding is to be the best of the best. Sure, they make steady progress, but they are hindered by their narrow thinking and investments. And the thing about Octanians is the moment they develop a new weapon, they deploy it in the field and wreak as much havoc as they can. There is next to no gap between development and deployment. Their capabilities are immediately known to the galaxy because they throw everything they can at their problems, often with huge casualties. As she said, this battle reports appeared on screen with losses reported in the 70 to 80% range. Not once has humanity been in open conflict. Our ships are designed to be outfitted with weapons, but do not carry them on them at all times, except for a few defensive items. The few times our military has had a skirmish with an advanced species, our leave-no-trace doctrine left no evidence for the enemy to analyze our abilities. Generals, what our enemy has accomplished in 3,000 years, We have accomplished more in just 150. This war, however stacked against us it seems, is winnable. She somehow managed to make eye contact with all the doubters in the room, as she stirred hope in everyone before taking a seat and allowing the General of Earth to take over. Generals, I have been privy to these reports for some time, and upon recent news have been in sessions to develop our attack strategies. You will find them in the paper reports. They are less fragile than you think. He said with a smirk, Stage 1, which will begin immediately, is the activation of our Warfleet outfitting program. All human shipyards will begin manufacturing the previously secret weapons and fitting them to every human vessel. Simultaneously, we will be activating the war training modules for every human both on and off world. This will cause all humans to be ready and trained for war in an instant. This will see our forces multiply 100 times in as many hours. Then we will begin Stage 2. Again, these are in your paper reports. Give them a read. He stood tall and to attention. Dismissed. The room stood and saluted before the mad scramble for the door began. After a few moments it was just Captain Pike, Miller, the General of Earth and General Mavers remaining in the room. Pike had never been so uncertain in his life. Was he even allowed to speak to the General of Earth? What was the protocol here? The General took that burden off his shoulders. Captain Pike, on behalf of Earth and humanity, I wish to thank you for your prompt delivery of your news, as bad as it was. His eyes momentarily looked solemnly distant before he continued. Due to your crew's particular skill set, I am assigning you the orders to carry the activation signal throughout the galaxy. We have already sent the signal, but it crawls along at light speed snail's pace. It will be up to you and your crew to take it to the furthest reaches of the galaxy. Its prompt spread will be the difference between victory and defeat. Do you accept these orders? The General's tone left no room for refusal. Pike followed protocol. Aye, sir, I accept these orders. Immediately, his mind was flooded with details, map plans, battle tactics, and flight paths, all in a rush. So much so his eyes were wide for a while as his mind processed it all. When Pike came to the General of Earth had left, and Mavers sat interacting with his compad. There you are. I had wondered how long it would take. John just shook his head, puzzled. Sir? Mavers put his pad down and looked up at him and Miller, who looked just as confused. You just got the info dump, the war training modules remembered into your brain. Basically 5 years of training in one go. You've been staring at nothing for a good 2 minutes. Don't worry about others, though. The remembering only activates when you're in a safe or private environment. But sir, I don't know what I know, you know? The memories were still a mess. Pike had had things remembered before, but never so much all at once. Was that even good for people? I understand. All I can say is you'll know it when you need it. For now you've been given your orders. I suggest you fulfill them promptly. Dismiss, Captain. Pike's hand flew up before he even registered its movement, his mind knowing he had to salute before even he did. Oh, that must be what it's like, he thought, even as his mind raced with what he had to now do.